and getting senior leadership roles, and growing capital and growing revenue and money and power. And so, there was a nice tick up, right? But for the last 15 years, it's been just a flat line. A flat line that has continued for the last 15 years. No material difference in the number of CEOs who are women. No significant difference in the number of women corporate board directors. No real significant difference in the number of women who are funded by venture capital companies. So roughly 7% are funded by venture capital funds, about 7% of women. And the numbers have pretty much stayed the same. Now, it's interesting though, I do feel a little bit of a change, and I think there are some very important and interesting reasons for it. How many of you heard about a woman named Sally Project buying a business networking group for women called 85 Broads? Got a few hands here, right? How many of you know who Sally Project is? Sally Project is a woman who was CEO of Citigroup's wealth management business. So, she was a hot track, career person her whole career. And I actually was invited to the White House last summer for a Women in Finance meeting. So I happened to meet Sally, and we had some great conversations. So she's extremely passionate about the economic advancement of women. And she wanted to buy 85 Broads because she feels that networking is a critical success factor. It's a factor that will allow women to start to transcend that flat line, right? And that was why she wanted to buy 85 Broads. Now, it's interesting because I think that is true. Broad Circle is a networking organization. We have really seen some amazing things come out of the connections that women have made at Broad Circle events over the last 5 years in Los Angeles. And we're at about 2,500 members all in LA right now. So we've had an incredible energy and opportunity to impact the lives of women in LA through the connections that we made over the last 5 years. But the reality is that the flat line has to do with, I think, a misperception of how things change when it comes to money and power in the United States. In America, we create our wealth. We build wealth. We are not given wealth, right? And as women, and as kind of process for women advancing, we've been pushing on the top, saying we want more diversity. We want more corporate board seats. We're going to organize action, investor action, to get more corporate board seats. We want more women leaders. The way we're going to get more women leaders is flexible work programs or whatever. The reality is that we're going to create more wealth for women. That flat line is going to change when women start creating significant wealth. And we can do that as women by investing in women. We can invest in women, we can support other women, you can really try to connect and collaborate and find opportunities for driving revenue and growing capital. The reason I started Broad Circle in 2008 was that I looked around my own connections and I saw significant women who were driving revenue, who were growing capital. CEOs, partners at law firms, partners at accounting firms, and I felt that we together could be a network who could provide transformational opportunities for capital growth for each other. And that's the essence of networking, but it really is also about investing in women. And so that's the thought that I want to leave you with. But as you create wealth for women, what's interesting is that giving back is always part of the scenario. You always find women who create wealth, and you find that they talk about their passion involves giving back. And so today, we're talking about philanthropy, and we're talking about your community, women that are making significant difference in the Orange County community. One of those women, the panel, these women are power players, significant players in this community, and their bodies are at your table. But one that you may not know is Jennifer Farr. Jennifer is a partner at CBIZ Mayer Hoffman McCann, a wonderful accounting firm that has significant programs to support women's leadership. CBIZ was one of the first companies to corporate sponsor Broad Circle and the concept of Broad Circle. Jennifer has risen to leadership within her firm and in her community and in her practice area, which is the nonprofit assurance and audit practice, has become a significant revenue driver and a leader in the firm and also in their women's leadership program. So I want to give Jennifer a huge hand. And I'd like her to come up here. Thank you, Jennifer.
Excited today to hear from this all-star panel. Each of these women I asked, and upon asking them, each of them said yes, and I was just blown away at their big hearts and willing to share their experiences with us today. When it comes to community involvement, not all of us have risen to the same level that all 5 of these esteemed women have risen to. And if you're like me, you maybe thought that you didn't have the ability or the opportunities within your companies to be as involved or to rise to this level as these 4 women. I worked in public accounting for 16 years for the same firm, auditing nonprofit organizations. I had a wonderful leader and mentor that I worked with until his retirement. And we would go out to the audit to a nonprofit, we'd sit down, listen to their inspirational story about a social event they had. We'd do the audit, we'd leave, we'd collect the bill, and then we'd rinse and repeat. And that was just the way I thought business was done. And within the last 2 years, my mentor retired, and I was given the opportunity to lead the nonprofit practice in Southern California. And I'm very, for those of you who know me, I'm a little competitive. I very much, especially being the only female partner in Orange County, I want to do it better than all the men. I want to show that I can add something different and new to the experience. So my goal was to try to be more involved with my nonprofit clients than we had been in the past. At least that was how I was going to start. One of the first things I did was take over his seat on the United Way's Community Investment Cabinet. And I remember being there on the first day, and there's 9 Way people here today, so thank you. I remember being there on the first day, and they'd handed out all these flyers about upcoming events, so Walk United and the Women's Philanthropy Breakfast. And I thought, holy cow, my boss had been coming to these meetings for 16 years or 15 years, and in all this time, he never told the employees, oh, there's a great event that you should participate in. So of course, I have this generation of people who work for me who would rather give up their Saturday to help a good cause than to reach into their wallet and pull out $25 to give to a nonprofit. So although we'd always participated in the United Way's annual campaigns, I thought it was an easier ask to ask my employees to participate in events. And so we started participating in those events, and it's amazing what it's done to the morale of our office, and also make us really feel good about what we do. Around the same time, the national office, we have a large national nonprofit practice, and they started rolling out this monthly nonprofit newsletter, which has those articles, everyone gets those emails that don't have a lot of value to you in particular. So I joined the editorial board and also decided to write an article that affected you locally. So each month I might write about this upcoming great event or something that's going on at one of our clients, or something that's relevant to California, and started producing that and sending that out to our clients. And probably the most impactful thing, and some of the people in the room today have been nonprofits that have experienced this with us. We started, people come in and tell us about the mission of their organization and talk about volunteer opportunities and the ways that we can get involved in their mission. And it seemed like it was a good idea. I had no idea the kind of impact that it would have on me personally and the people in our office. Just last month at lunch, people gave up their lunchtime, and about 20 people sat around, and we stuffed toiletries into athletic socks for SOS for their homeless services, and someone drove them down there. And just the laughter and such a little thing really impacted our office. So I just wanted, my point of all this is to tell all of you that if you ever felt that maybe you didn't have the opportunity to be a power player in the nonprofit environment, that it really just takes a little bit of effort and a lot of heart, and to do something and to start to both corporate change within your office. And just because someone has always done something, done business a certain way, doesn't mean that you can't step up now and start to make those changes. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who's had these experiences. I can see a lot of leaders out there, and I know a lot of your personal stories that you've done this as well. So very excited to hear about these wonderful power players, but also hope that you can all aspire to be power players and help move the needle and be involved from a corporate leadership standpoint in your organizations as well. So thank you for being here today.
But just from that direction, Jacqueline, Dorrance, Executive Director and CEO of the Arnold and Mabel Beckman Foundation, and Sue Parks, CEO of WalkStyles Inc., and Board Director and Executive Committee Member of United Way of Orange County, Paula Golden, Executive Director of Broadcom Foundation, Director of Community Affairs and Broadcom Corporation, and Shelley, President of the Orange County Community Foundation, are with us. So we have an incredible panel. And I wanted to open the panel part with this great quote that Shelley pulled out for us. To give away money is an easy matter and in any woman's power. But to decide to whom to give and how much and when, for what purpose and how, is neither in every woman's power nor an easy matter. Hence it is that such excellence is rare, praiseworthy, and noble. And this quote was Shelley from Aristotle, correct? What's the state of philanthropy and the nonprofit sector in Orange County? Can you just you've been involved and engaged in it for many years, I'm not sure how many, because you're only 22, but...
To tell the truth, I'll be 50 this year, and I've been in the sector for 27 years, and I'm proud of it. To talk a little bit about the background of the community foundations we prepared, so I'll do both of those things. It's really been an incredible blessing to be part of the philanthropic sector in Orange County for 27 years. The first almost 15 of which were on the front lines in local nonprofit organizations. 10 years at Orangewood and 4.5 years at Girls Incorporated. Pieces of my heart are still with both organizations. In the last 13 with the Orange County Community Foundation, I've sort of been able to have the chance to see both sides of that giving equation, both the donor side and the nonprofit side. So just a little bit of background, as Darya had asked, on the Community Foundation. We'll be having our 25th anniversary next year, and while we are one of the younger of about 750 community foundations in the nation, we're one of the fastest growing. In our just not quite 25 years, we have already granted $240 million that's come all from philanthropy in Orange County. And much of that has stayed right here in Orange County, but some of it has been granted in partnership with our donors around the country and all over the globe. So we are moving the needle and making an impact, even as a relatively young community in Orange County. And sort of the heart of our mission at the Community Foundation is really about kind of growing the pie for philanthropy, right? That there is always more. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not you get the money or I get the money. It's how do we make there be more? Very similar to Darya's mission for this group. How do we really create greater excitement and focus on philanthropy? I had a colleague once who ran the Community Foundation in the Silicon Valley, and there was a lot of uproar in the field when some of the financial firms began offering donor-advised funds, Fidelity and Vanguard, and people were up in arms in community foundations like, that was our thing, and they've taken it, how we can get, right? And this colleague said such a beautiful thing, and I've never forgotten it. He said, at a conference of community foundation leaders, he says, that's not Fidelity or Vanguard or whoever, if there's anyone here from those organizations, we love what you're doing. That's not our competition. Our competition is apathy and conspicuous consumption. It just gives me chills. That was 13 years ago that I heard that. I get the chills every single time I repeat it, and I say it to myself all the time, because really, philanthropy is stronger in partnerships with United Way and with the nonprofits that are in the room, and with Billy from Colette's, and You know, I'm going to give you a shout out, Billy. You know, that is what makes philanthropy strong, and it's what I love about being part of the Community Foundation, because we really do get that chance to strengthen the giving side, working with donors to help their giving be as strategic and effective as possible, and then helping nonprofits be strong and capable in fulfilling their missions. And that is when the tide rises for everyone. So to Darya's initial question about sort of state of philanthropy, I am going to talk about this more, but I'll give you two headline teasers. The first is, despite the studies that we see from time to time, somebody quotes some study that says, oh, you know, per capita giving lags in Orange County. You know, Orange County is not as generous as, you know, similar metropolitan areas in the U.S. Let me just tell you, emphatically and categorically, that is absolutely not based in any data. In fact, I got so irritated a few years ago about reading about this that I paid Wallace Walrod from the Business Council to purchase data from the IRS to actually find out if that was true or not. And it's absolutely not true. So there you go. Philanthropy is alive and well in Orange County, and we have so much to be proud of, because in my view, we set the curve both on the giving side and on the nonprofit side. So philanthropy is done in Orange County just like we do everything here, with an entrepreneurial spirit, with creativity, with innovation. It's not our grandfather's giving. We're really making it, and including broader spectrum of the community and giving. And the companion to that is Orange County's nonprofit sector is best in class, and I've been all over the country and looked at nonprofits everywhere, and I would put Orange County's nonprofit sector up against any nonprofit community anywhere in the country for the way that we are effectively meeting the needs in this community.
Wow.
Well, you know, Paula,
That was just my self-introduction. Did you want me to continue?
Paula, you also are engaged in a different aspect of philanthropy. You're at Broadcom, a significant economic player in this community, and you're involved with the foundation as well as the sustainability as well as the company as a whole. But can you explain the role of the corporate foundation and your particular corporate foundation?
Hi all, it's really nice to be here, and I see a lot of friendly faces as well, particularly Jennifer, who actually audits our foundation, and they do a great job. And actually what they do from an audit perspective is they look at the integrity of a corporate foundation, which does have some unique features which I'd like to touch on. Before I do that, I want to comment on Shelley's remark about Aristotle. I'm a lawyer, so I always believe you can interpret anything. And at the time of Aristotle, actually, in his world, in the Greek world, women and men were equal. If you recall your mythology, you'll know that women actually were often more powerful than the men in the pantheon of great deities. And beyond that, they didn't have primogeniture, and they didn't have rules with regard to men inheriting wealth to the degree that they do in a more primitive Teuton society from which all of us hail. So with that in mind, I think it's important to understand that when you look at the issue of wealth and you look at the issue of women, while we haven't seen some of the numbers tick up that they should in the business side, and I would venture to say that the good news is there are a lot of young women coming up. It's going to take a full generation to see the benefit of our generation's good work. But I, for one, am very pleased to see more women in Congress. You change the laws, you change the landscape, you change the basic philosophy of government, you begin to change the opportunities that exist down, what I consider down into the community. So I'm optimistic.
Me too.
With that in mind, Broadcom is a foundation that is only 3 years old. Our company is only 22 years old, and for those of you that don't know what Broadcom does, if you have a cell phone that's jingling in your purse right now, chances are it's because we have chips in that cell phone. We're really known as the arms dealer of the computer world. We have cell phone chips in pretty much everything that you use, whether it's Samsung or iPhone or any other Nokia, Motorola. These are all clients of ours. And we also are in all the computers you use, and the GPS that you might be bouncing off of when you're sending Welly and Henry Nicholas, both of whom have family foundations, and their families, their wives and husbands, both very generous to Orange County. But Broadcom didn't fly under a flag, and this is where I want to comment just briefly on what a good corporation does when they set up a foundation. It didn't have a flag to fly under where the community knows that Broadcom cares. And while we connect everything, and that's our motto as a corporation, we wanted to connect into our communities. And we have over 100 facilities around the world with 13,000 employees. So this is no small task. Fortunately for Orange County, our world headquarters are here. So, what do when you set up a foundation with absolutely no agenda? You take a look at what your company's all about. If any of you have a chance to see a piece that I have online, it's from an interview with Insight with Oppenheim Associates, Mark Oppenheim and Associates, where I talk about this. But basically a corporation really targets in on its corporate soul in order to structure a foundation. The example I use often is, why is it that Ronald McDonald has Ronald McDonald houses where kids drop coins in as they buy their hamburgers? Kids, families, Happy Meals, it all goes together. So when you look at the Ronald McDonald House model, which is wonderful for families with children with cancer, you really are looking into a fundamental corporate value and also a marketing strategy of corporations. So Broadcom is business to business. We have no marketing strategy, really. We just go talk to our clients on airplanes, because there aren't that many. They're big companies that then proceed to go retail with what they have to offer. So what do? We really made the decision as a corporation to focus in on education. We employ over 5,000 people in Southern California alone. Many of those are PhD candidates or PhD degree. And we know that there is a bevy of young people out there, women, underserved, who are not part of the catchment of a very male-dominated engineering community. So it was very easy for Broadcom to pick its mark, and that is education. We're not Happy Meals, we're education. Makes sense. The other aspect of what we did is we examined the community at large, and a lot of the people that we work with are part of the Orange County STEM Initiative, which is ably directed by Sue Nguyen. And many of the people in this room are very familiar with what we're trying to do. Everybody doesn't want to step over each other in the area of science, technology, engineering, and math education. They just want to solve a problem. And one of the ways that we've done that is we've picked a niche. We're concerned about middle schoolers. We're concerned basically that we take kids at that last opportunity to capture their imagination before they make electives in high school that will either make or break their futures. If you fail to take algebra and algebra 2 in high school, your opportunities are so narrowed in terms of any job you're going to get, whether it's in the entertainment industry down here in Orange County, in the healthcare or the electronics industry that we're in. Bottom line is, keeping kids interested in math and science in high school is our sweet spot. So when we think of our Happy Meal, it's really how we're going to keep kids interested in math and science so they can someday become engineers here in Orange County. And our mark are really the women and underserved who are represented in our profession. So it's very self-serving, quite frankly, our philanthropy. And it goes back to Aristotle's quote, which is, we're trying to be smart about the dollars we spend and spend them wisely, men and women and corporations, to achieve what we think are very important goals for the community.
So, and you know, it's interesting to think back about a time not too long ago. When did Broadcom go public? You just mentioned it.
That's
2007, when Broadcom wasn't here, that wealth wasn't created, and they were not an actor in your community and the global environment. But again, a story of philanthropy and wealth creation and technology. Jackie, yours is in science, and the passion of your foundation is all about science and basic science at the Beckman Foundation. Could you tell us a little about the vision, mission, passion, kind of a little nutshell history of the organization and your role?
Sure. So I need to explain a little bit about Dr. Beckman. It's an Arnold and Mabel Beckman Foundation, And in order to understand what the foundation is all about, you have to understand a little bit about Dr. Beckman. And he established the foundation in 1978 after he and his wife had accumulated a great deal of wealth. And born in 1900 in a very small farming community in Illinois, he didn't really see the reason to have all this wealth. And he worked as a partner with his wife, felt it was very, very important. She was involved in every decision that he made. And we always talk about, when we talk about the Arnold and Mabel Beckman Foundation, we always make sure that her name is included. It's that important to him. So I think that was just very insightful of him. He was a very insightful and visionary man, and you can see that through his philanthropy. So early on in his career, he had the opportunity to work for Caltech as a professor, and he met a gentleman who wanted to help him solve a problem with the acidity of lemon juice. And from there, he created or invented the pH meter. And he then went on to invent and manufacture other types of medical instruments that really revolutionized science. And if you think about taking science from the test tube era, where it took weeks and months to get your research results, to the electronic era, that's what Dr. Beckman did. And he forever changed the efficiency and speed of scientific research. And fortunately for us, he also changed Orange County. So that's what his foundation is all about. That was his passion. His love in life was basic scientific research and Mabel. And so that's exactly what he has directed the foundation to support, was basic scientific research, fostering the invention of new methods and materials and instruments to help to accomplish that goal. So since the inception of the foundation, we've provided over $600 million for the betterment of mankind, and that's just by providing critical funding to very young scientists at a very important stage in their career. And those scientists have gone on to really change our lives by improving crops, by energy efficiency, medicine, and the environment. Like Dr. Beckman, they have revolutionized manufacturing, technology, and a broad range of other industries. And I really think that they've changed our lives, they've changed history, and they will continue to change our future. But to help Dr. Beckman fulfill this long-term vision of his is just, has been a real privilege for me. And I just feel very honored to have the opportunity to know him and to be able to help him in this small way that I am able to.
In a big way. Turning to you, you are a businesswoman, you have built a company and are fully engaged in the business and corporate world, and you decided to give back. As I said, when women create wealth and lead in business, they are always engaged in philanthropy. And Sue Parks is a great model of that as a volunteer leader at United Way. You created and led the Women Business Leaders aspect of the Orange County United Way. Can you tell us a little about that and tell us about what brought you to do that volunteer leadership?
Sure, thank you. That's again great to be with all of you. How many of you woke up and knew you're coming here and we're going to have the cheese bread? It's like, I put a smile on my face all morning. I just wanted to do a little bit and comment that I'm on a couple of different boards that are represented here in terms of the community, so I'll acknowledge Lisa Walter, Susan G. Coleman, and also Kathy Selvas with the Girl Scouts. I'm on those boards as well. So as part of the giving back. But let me talk about the United Way. Carla here can probably shout out some numbers. And so I'm speaking to you for those of you that are interested or thinking about getting involved on a personal level in terms of the nonprofit world here in Orange County. I lived here for a number of years and I worked outside the county. So every Sunday night or Monday morning I flew to Denver, Phoenix, wherever, and I flew back Friday night. I didn't know very many people. I knew my husband. I didn't know very many other people in the county, and we lived here a long time like that. And then when I was making a change in careers, I happily, I'll say, I did an interview and I said I really would love to get involved in the county I lived in. And that's one of those things like, be careful when you say it, because the calls started coming and we were laughing because I don't know how the United Way got my home phone number, but they were very resourceful and they called me at home one day and they were talking about, remember this was 2002, about creating a women's giving circle. So that'd be the simplest way of doing it. They had had some success on the East Coast about getting women together, and I said, I don't know anybody here, really, but it intrigued me because I wanted to. I mean, for being part of the community, I wanted to get involved, and so there were 9 of us at that time that got together and said we could do this, and I'm proud to say that the women that got involved at that moment and the women who have subsequently got involved, either in the Women's Philanthropy Fund, which is what we entitled the group at that time, plus a second group that came on board, the Women Looking Forward group, I think since 2002. Find all of these women that didn't know each other because they've been so busy working and they never had a chance to really get out and involved. And maybe time was a very precious resource, and it gave them an opportunity to get together, get to know other people that kind of had that same concern about, lack of time, but really wanted to do something. And from there, people found their passions. And I think that was one of the best things, is people started learning, oh, I'm really interested in education. I'm really interested in technology and STEM. I'm really interested in helping this geographic area, whatever it is. And it gave them a voice and a passion. So that's been wonderful to see, the women coming together. And I now am aware of many, many women giving groups, and different things are going on in Orange County. And I tell my friends outside of this county about the women here, and they're all blown away. I don't know how many of you went to the Women's Philanthropy Fund breakfast a month or so ago, and we had a keynote from Chicago who kind of blew us away, the woman that started one of the major players in helping women become self-sufficient in Afghanistan. She left there and said, I want to move to Orange County. I mean, I'm happy to have you. So anyway, so there's so many wonderful nonprofits in this room. There's so many great ways to get involved. What was important to me at that time, and continue to this day, I wanted to be associated with something that I knew was very accountable, that it was very transparent, where their money went, how the discipline about how they the grants that they gave, and the opportunity to get involved in terms of that. So the idea of the accountability of the organization, and also just because of my business background, is organizations that, and there's been a tough couple of years here for a lot of organizations, but organizations that were really at a point that they could really grow and do more together, not like just how we were going to keep the doors open, right? In terms of where I felt I could be best is how do we network, how do we think strategically, how do we take a new step? So everybody might have a different passion or focus, but there's a lot of organizations out there that would love to have you involved. It is a great community to be involved in as a woman.
I think that, needless to say, it is quite amazing that Sue not only led in business, but when she decided to do philanthropy, she decided to, really lead there as well. So that's great. And thank you for sharing that. That's a nice transition to kind of talking about Orange County. And Paula and Jackie, you both talked a little about that, but as a corporate foundation and a private foundation, I'd like you to each comment on one, what does strategic philanthropy mean to you and your organization, and then how does that play out in Orange County? Paula, if you would start.
the operative word of strategic, is that good? Yeah? The operative word, strategic, is really important when you're trying to figure out what to do with relatively limited dollars. In the corporate world, we're finding more and more that marketing budgets are being slashed. And it used to be that you would see a lot of money for marketing going into the communities. And you'd see it going in quite directly. Increasingly, corporate dollars are not being spent at the local level in that marketing manner. I'm seeing heads nod yes. And it's a very serious problem. Because as we all know, if you don't have your local organizations well fueled, they can't serve the communities. And with dwindling government resources, this is going to ultimately lead to some very serious collapse in key areas of our social structure. So when a corporation like Broadcom is trying to determine how to be strategic and at the same time how to be impactful locally, like I say, local for us is all the way over to Bangalore and as far east as Seychelles and Singapore, and we're heading south to Brazil. So for us to think globally and act locally in a world where you don't see a lot of dollars for local resources, what we've tried to do is pick, again, a very, very important sweet spot. What I've tried to do is to direct that to a global project that then can be leveraged locally. So I'll give you the best example we have, which is our flagship program, the Broadcom Masters. The Broadcom Masters is the sponsorship of middle school science fair around the world. We started with the nation, now we're around the world. And we're tapping into basically a structure that's been in place since 1945 with the old Westinghouse Talent Search, which is now the Intel program is the high school program. We basically are the farm team for the old Westinghouse program, now Intel. So what this has allowed Broadcom to do is to spend money at a very high level in a national program, but then to put my time and our volunteer resources and some of our dollars into implementing that at a local level. This model has worked thus far very well because it's allowed us not only to use the platform of middle school science fair to energize the local Orange County, using Orange County as the example, the regional fair here. It's allowed us to set up a training program for middle school teachers who are, by the way, math and science phobic, and they've been taught to be math and science phobic in our system, not only here but around the nation. It's really scary. There's a book coming out called The U.S. Skills Gap that talks about Broadcom and what we're doing, but it's coming out in July, and it's really a heads up about how far behind the curve we really are. But anyway, we've used our Masters platform, which we pay for in large dollars at one level, to create teacher training here in Orange County. We've now started going into the after-school programs and saying after school is not empty time, it's STEM learning time, and translating programs into STEM training so kids can participate in the local science fair. That we are now leveraging to create a similar program around California. And one of the really cool things about trying to be strategic that way is you get noticed very quickly. Our CEO has just been named one of the top 100 CEOs in the nation in STEM education initiatives. And the state superintendent, Tom Torkelson, gave me a call when I was in London saying, would you speak about what you're doing to leverage your dollars at the California conference we're having this fall. So, and that's not bragging rights, folks, but it's just saying that we really are trying to be smart with the limited dollars we have. It's very, very easy, as Shelley and Aristotle both say, to unload, to unload money in a very, and make yourself feel good. When I first came to Broadcom, people said, how many golf tournaments can we go to on these dollars that we've now put in this foundation? And I said, zero. But to do that in a strategic way and have a company back you to do it has been a privilege. So that's sort of a long way of getting to the fact that that's what we do, that's why we do it, and the underlying strategy is one that we think is good for corporations to consider. We spend a lot of time partnering in Orange County with other corporations to try to strategically place their philanthropic dollars as well.
That's great. And Jackie, you could just go ahead and comment on that as well.
Okay, so Dr. Beckman was actually very, very strategic in his giving also. And he was always looking at how to leverage his dollars, how to have great impact in his funding, and was extremely successful. And as I mentioned earlier, the county was extremely fortunate that in the early 50s, he decided to move his family and his company to Orange County. And as a result of that, he has a great interest, or had a great interest in supporting good causes in Orange County. And he did that really early on by providing two major gifts to the Beckman Laser Institute. He helped to fund, create the Beckman Laser Institute with the construction of a facility and an endowment. And he also gave a major gift to the National Academy of Sciences and for a West Coast headquarters right adjacent to UCI, with the idea that he could bring the greatest minds in the world, those individuals that are involved with the National Academies of Sciences, and bring that science west by providing them with a conference center. And with the Beckman Laser Institute, the results have been phenomenal. The royalties that are generated at the Beckman Laser Institute they generate almost 50% of the annual royalties that UCI receives. So pretty impressive. They've also, their significant research contribution is in laser-based therapeutics and diagnostic imaging techniques. And they treat about 3,000 patients a year at the Beckman Laser Clinic for a variety of vascular birthmarks, diabetic and metabolic syndromes, cancer treatments, and will continue to make these advances. We're working right now on the development of cost-effective technologies that for personalized medicines that can be delivered at the bedside, at the clinic, in the hospitals, and directly at your home. One of those is a new little miniature laser-based fiber optic technology that for intravascular imaging of heart disease, neurovascular disease, and airway disorders. So just very, very, very impactful giving. I mean, small dollars that have had enormous impact. We also have a Beckman at Science program, which is for K through 6, so I was really excited. Have impacted well over 1 million students. The test scores have risen. The teachers are much more excited about teaching science. They've learned how to teach it in a different manner. The concepts are being much more greatly understood, because elementary school teachers really don't know a lot about science teaching. So they're a little bit intimidated, and this has been extremely helpful. I mean, so helpful, in fact, that a group of females got together, a large group of women got together and decided that they were going to found Kids at Science, which is basically to sustain the efforts of the Beckman at Science program and to keep it in line with what's going on now. So they're taking the hands-on inquiry-based science, they're integrating the new science standards and incorporating STEM learning in that, and I believe it's going to be very, very effective. Another thing that we've done has been exciting and
has tremendous potential is we provided significant funding for the Gavin Herbert Eye Institute at UCI. And that was to help with the construction of this really beautiful new facility that's just about ready to open in a couple of months. And the Institute really promises to be at the very forefront of ophthalmological progress, and spanning from basic research to translational and clinical research. And because we're so uniquely situated in Orange County, where they have so many eye institutes, I think we'll be able to take this exciting research and get it out to the community and into the hospitals much more quickly than if we were located somewhere else. We've also been fortunate to be able to support the Beckman Breast Imaging Center at Hope Hospital, which of course impacts women greatly. It's a state-of-the-art imaging center, and it's done in a very thoughtful way, privacy, comfort, just really thinking about patient care. We provided significant funding to Chapman University and the Boy Scout Science Camps, the Discovery Science Center, the Mind Institute, the Irvine Medical Center. But it's amazing to me that you can take a small amount of money, and if you think about it very carefully and strategically, those dollars just continue to grow, and it really provides people and institutions with an opportunity to make great, great changes that they never thought that they could make.
That's amazing and inspirational.
And I am delighted to hear about the close relationship between UCI and the Beckman Foundation. UCI has been a great supporter of Broad Circle in Orange County, and Joanne, thank you for everything that you've done. And so, but I'm also encouraged to hear about what Broadcom and the Beckman Foundation are doing in STEM education. It's certainly something that, as a nation, we're lacking. I'm personally particularly passionate about it for women. Science and technology are great innovation industries in the United States, and I believe that they're going to be a driver of wealth creation for women. So whenever I meet young women, my advice is try to find a career in science and technology. And but also what that does, though, Paul, you pointed out that as corporations and foundations are engaged in strategic philanthropy, sometimes some of the social services in the community have to find funding, and you know, how does that align? And Shelley, you're really in the hot seat on that. Can you tell us about Orange County and some of the unique challenges of this community in that regard?
Sure. So thinking about this in advance, trying to crystallize this, I would categorize our challenges of our nonprofit sector in kind of three big headlines. The first being the difference between the outside perception of life in Orange County and the reality for people that are vulnerable and hurting, number one, which I'll give detail on in a sec. The second being a relatively small group of donors that's on everybody's list, right? And we're all tripping over each other as we're trying to find the same people. And third has to do with communication challenges. So perception versus reality, right? The outside view of Orange County is what? Luxury, wealth. People think of, our, opulent homes and, what's on their Real Housewives or whatever, which I know if I watched it, I don't, but that's my perception of what people think of Orange County from these outside views. And of course, those of us in the field know that that is so far from the reality of our community, and it's something for those of you that have been following our work that we undertook as a project last year, working with McKinsey and Company to try to really define and highlight what the reality of life is here and dispelling those myths. And what I've heard, the most positive feedback I've heard has been from the nonprofits who've said, thank you, thank you for giving us this story that's backed by data that has a narrative around what life is really like in Orange County for almost half of our kids in K through 12 school that are on free and reduced lunch. half of our almost 500,000 children in Orange County in K through 12 public school, 45% of them are in families making less than $40,000 a year. A family of 4. Right? Who wants to live on that? Well, that's almost, that's not some small pocket of poverty in Orange County. It's almost half of our kids. That's our next generation. We have to think of what the attendant challenges are in health and education that come with those sets of challenges. So that's the first one, is it's very hard for Orange County nonprofits to get anybody to pay attention to the importance of the work they're doing. We especially see that for funders outside of the community. I cannot tell you how many funders based in LA or other places that I've heard say, why should we spend our dollars in Orange County? They have plenty of money down there. We should be spending our money in LA where the need really is. Okay, so that's challenge number 1. Nonprofits, can I get an amen to that? Yeah, I know. I'm preaching to the choir. Second, right, we're still developing our philanthropic culture here. And quite frankly, our first generation kind of founders and wealth creators are largely still among us. And it's a relatively small group. This is a big challenge for the future. So I'm asked to talk to nonprofits about this all the time. How do we develop the pipeline? How do we broaden our circles? And my watchword is, you have to be prepared that there's going to be a gap between the passing of our first generation and the full attainment of our second generation. And that is one of the biggest strategic challenges facing our sector. Because, right, the younger people that we have coming onto our boards are not coming with those big balance sheets. They're writing a check out of their to our organization that's coming out of their paycheck. Not giving $1 million pledges that are coming off the balance sheet. So that's a big challenge. And thirdly, communications. So we have no broadcast media market in Orange County at all. And for a lot of years, quite frankly, after the LA Times kind of abandoned us, we didn't have much going on at all in terms of the print media. And now the new owners of the Register, we've all been watching, and some of us in the room are writing, and really seeing the increased attention to Orange County. But this is a very hard community to get your message out in, right? There's no center. If you're in a big metropolitan area, if you're in LA or San Francisco or New York, they're sort of centralized. There's a big city center. No, there's no downtown in Orange County. We're 34 parochial little cities, and there's no hub. And it's very hard, and it's hard for people new to the community to come to me all the time. How do I get plugged in? In other communities, you find what's the 3 or 4 places you should be, and you'll eventually meet everybody. In Orange County, it's like, well, here's the roster of 3.2 million people. Start working your way down. It's very. But here's the thing I have to tell you, and then I'll end with this. Jack Peltison. Does anyone remember Jack? Iconic, of course, iconic Chancellor of UC Irvine, one of the greatest gentlemen that Orange County has ever known, said to me once, Shelley, there's really only about 500 people in the world, and only about 50 of them in Orange County. So the good news is that if you stick around a while, you eventually meet all 50 people, and we now need to expand that circle as we head to the next generation.
Wow. I actually think that a lot of communities can relate to that story in different aspects. I think one of the things that I have learned, Broad Circle has been doing the philanthropy event for the last 5 years, since the very beginning of the first year that we were in business, if you can call it that. One of our women, Wendy Guerin, who runs the Parsons Family Foundation in Los Angeles, said, you need to do something on philanthropy. It can't just all be about money and power. But Wendy also says that running a nonprofit of any size, or a foundation, private foundation, corporate foundation, is like running a business. I see that in my day job because I manage some nonprofit money, and we talk about that a lot. And the challenges are there, but you actually have a little bit of a greater challenge, right? Because you have the running a business aspect, but you have a double bottom line. You have the social benefit that you have to address as well. And so, Paula and Jackie, could you give us a little flavor on that? Running a private foundation, running a corporate foundation, the running a business aspect, the double bottom line aspect.
I guess this is where I have to once again look to Jennifer and say, in justifying our numbers, we also have to justify our existence. And And I actually think, though, I'm going to pass this over pretty quick because I'm very fortunate, and actually I would say probably Jacqueline is as well. We have benefactors, in my case a corporation, in her case a family, a very philanthropic family that left a legacy, that allow us the luxury of kind of managing the money. And so having spoken to that already, I'm going to sort of move beyond that and comment on what I think is more important, which is managing the nonprofits that are actually doing the work in the community. And you know, we tend to call what I do a nonprofit, what you do is a nonprofit, but having organizations bringing in money for the Girl Scouts, coming up with the programs, and talking to people, the 50 or others, is really a more challenging business model. Now, what I think is really important to bear in mind in looking at the business model is, where does your wealth come from over time? And Shelley's touched on something that is incredibly important, and that is that there is a generational phenomenon in Orange County that actually is going to kick in. And it's going to kick in probably in the next 30 years. And the big mistake that I think that is made by a lot of nonprofits that are raising money and spending it into the community is that they tend to look at their donor on a gift-by-gift basis. The danger of that is the same as it is in any big business or any enterprise, any entrepreneurial enterprise, is if you don't look beyond the first day, you're going to close your office on day 2. So looking beyond the first day of raising money is one of the great challenges, I think, for nonprofits that are trying to survive in an environment that has shifted so dramatically. And to me, that translates into looking at a donor not as a single day donor, but looking at them over the lifetime of their giving and looking at them as their potential for an estate gift. And not losing sight of that in the way they are cultivated and handled and developed over time. The big mistake a lot of people make with wealthy people is that they take the money and say thank you from a level of wealth. They tend to think that they need to go up to say thank you. I happen to disagree with that. I think you need to figure out ways to give people small gifts of what you do on a regular basis, and it isn't the form of blast emails, but really trying to get in tune with somebody's day-to-day needs if they're a long-term donor. This isn't something that's done very well by anyone, but it's an area that I think has great potential to help nonprofits be better at the business of nonprofits. There are other issues you can talk about, controlling your budget, partnering over services and capital needs, this kind of thing. I think it's all really smart. People like Shelley spend a lot of time on that. Dan, who just left, spends a lot of time on that. A lot of the collaborative efforts are really designed to help people get to those issues, but the harder issue is keeping the money coming in the door. And I do think that this intergenerational phenomenon is something that people need to pay attention to as they're looking at how they're going to really create a sustained business model for nonprofits in Orange County.
Okay, so challenges of running a private foundation. And it's true, we are fortunate because we're not a nonprofit and we don't have to go out and we have fundraise. And I know that that's a huge, huge challenge, and I have the greatest respect for everyone in this room that tackles that. I mean, I've done it myself to a very small degree, and I know how challenging it is. So my kudos to everyone that in this room, basically, that's doing that. I don't face that challenge. What I face is a completely different challenge, and part of it is because of Dr. Beckman again, and his philosophy, and what he said many, many, many times is he didn't want to spend money to give away money. And so as a result of that, being, I believe probably the largest foundation in Orange County, we have 4 staff people, including myself. And we do everything. I mean, we don't have a marketing department, we don't have an IT department, we don't have a legal department, we don't have an accounting department, we don't have departments. We have for people that run, 4 or 5 programs and do everything, from ordering the water to, swapping on the postage and everything in between, all the investments, audits, all of that. So that's a big challenge for us. Another really huge challenge for me personally, and probably the most important thing that I think that I do as the executive director of the Beckman Foundation is to ensure that the Beckman Foundation continues to be the Beckman Foundation, and that Dr. Beckman's vision will be fulfilled. And I think it's something that he and I spent a lot of time talking about. I promised him that I would do everything in my power to make sure that that's happening. And so far I've been successful, but it's a constant struggle. And again, Dr. Beckman, Aristotle, Shelley.
Well, that's some good company.
But he told me right up front that it was so much easier to make the money than it was to give it away wisely. And when he told me that, I just had to chuckle. Well, it's absolutely true. I mean, you can give the money away, but to give it away wisely, in an impactful manner, in a manner that helps the organization rather than hinders them, it's very, very challenging. So those are my challenges.
Well, I think that is such great wisdom, and we all know the story that Warren Buffett decided that he was going to let Bill and Melinda Gates give away his money because of that incredible challenge. And I think that it's so terrific that there's such thoughtful work being done in the philanthropic sectors on parts of private foundations and corporate foundations and community foundations and volunteer leaders to try to have the maximum impact and be very strategic in this sector. We're kind of winding down and running a little out of time, so I'm going to go off script here and ask you all to help me understand you and your role and your passions and your personal mission. Warren Buffett said he had a passion for business and wasn't particularly wise about philanthropy, so that's why he decided to do that. So something drives us all, and you all are powerful players here in this sector. So why don't we start with Sue? Tell us what drives you. You've been an amazing business leader and volunteer leader.
Well, I was thinking when the last discussion was going on, the last comments, I think at some point I looked at myself and said, okay, so how are I making decisions of what I'm going to get involved in? And the United Way came easy in the fact that I was asked to get involved and then had such a good experience. In that case, I wanted to be involved with something that was really, how do we help this be a better place to live, right? Like the legacy of how do you make sure that Orange County is the best place in this entire country to live for everyone. I think that's Shelley's point. And the United Way is embarking on its next 10-year goals, and it's a very collaborative, it's all based on collective impact for all of us to get involved to say how we make this community goals around health and income and education and housing. So I love the strategic part of that. So the strategic part about being involved with an organization that is working to engage other organizations and other individuals for common good here in Orange County is really important to me, because there is the tale of two cities that they talk about, the two different sides. On a personal level, I lost my mother-in-law, to breast cancer, and I looked for the organization that I could get involved with the health side, because my company, I do corporate wellness programs, that's what my company does, and health is so important. And I had a chance to meet Lisa, and that touched me because it was how do we help make sure that every woman in Orange County who needs help with her breast health care gets help, right? So that made perfect sense to me and had that ability to do it here in Orange County. So I love that. The Girl Scouts, I became one at 52, so I'm older than Shelley. Not as old as Aristotle. But was about leadership. And one thing that I learned from being the only woman many, many times as I rose up my corporate career is that we need women that come into the workforce armed with leadership skills and know how to get things done from the earliest age possible, that are smart in STEM, that understand what careers are out there, and looked around and love what the Girl Scouts do to help make sure the next generation of women leaders are strong and confident and all the right things. So anyway, my husband will say it's always back to the women, but they, I really think, and I look at, when they look at countries outside of the United States that are really falling apart, they're really realizing that working through the women is how they're going to change those countries, right? You know, how to change it. And I think collectively as women, we have an opportunity to play a bigger role, and there's wonderful opportunities to get involved. So.
That was the greatest answer. Well, I would just say two things. I think professionally, what drove me initially, and I've been so blessed to have fulfilled, is this idea that I could find an intersection between where my skill set was and something that would really feed my heart and that I had a sense of purpose around. And I think to find both of those in what I've been able to make my career for 27 years is something I'm grateful for every day. And then at the Community Foundation, where I have found my passion is really around helping people find their passion for giving back and having the chance. And when I was at Orange Women and Girls Inc., it was my job to introduce people to the joy of supporting those organizations, which I love doing, but I have found a different joy in sitting across the table without agenda, which people almost never get to experience. Someone just engaging with them and asking, what is your passion? What is in your heart? What have you not had the chance to express? And helping them find the joy of making a difference in something that they might not even have known about themselves was important to them because no one's really asked them the question. They're so busy being introduced to lots of great causes. That's something, to be honest, that I never knew could be so rewarding. And so that has really become the new passion of maybe the second half of my philanthropic career.